gentlemen seen your midterm grades yet?
Well, they're not posted yet, sir.
2 C's, 2 D's, and an F. That's a 1.2 grade average. Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
This is WICR.
From the basement of La Penta, this is your host, The Rock is on this Monday, April 18th, 2016, on a beautiful Monday, April 18th, we should say the least, 75 degrees today, and we had a lot going on this weekend. We had the second week of the baseball season, and we had the kickoff, or the opening of the NBA playoffs, and we got to jump right into there. You know, in the first round, overall, I would say other than maybe the Pistons giving the Cavs, some scares, or giving the Cavs a run for their money in the first game, in which the Cavs winded up winning 106-101. And, they played tremendously well, led by Andre Drummond and Reggie Jackson. But I would say, other than that game between the Pistons and the Cavaliers, there was nothing exciting about it, to be honest with you. Because most of the game ones were blowouts. You had San Antonio crushing the Memphis Grizzlies. You had the Clippers beating the Trailblazers by 115-95 by 20 points. Then you had the Warriors who beat my Rockets 104-78. But then the biggest blowout of the game, or the biggest blowout amongst all game ones, were the Oklahoma City Thunder crushing the Dallas Mavericks 108-70. It's just, when you see these blowouts in the game ones, is it a sign for something to come? Maybe. And you wonder, what are most of these series going to end in 4 or 5 games? Is it going to be a quick first round? That's the question. And I can tell you, I can see most of these series ending in 4 games, or no more than 5 games. And let's just dissect this, We'll start off with the Warriors series. Warriors-Rockets. The Warriors, we saw what they did all year. We saw what they did all year long. Was them crushing the Rockets in game 1, indicative? Yeah, in a way. But you know what? The Rockets are opponent team. They just had an off day, and they can maneuver some shots. So you know what? If they put their minds to it, I don't see that series. A lot of people count it out, but that series could possibly go to 6 games. And then you throw in the fact that Stephen Curry, he's having ankle problems, or he's injured with his ankle, and there's a 50-50 chance that he may not play tonight in game 2. So that's something you got to consider, though. So that series, I don't see it happening. I don't see that series ending shortly, or ending in 4 or 5 games. And then we go on to the Clippers and the Trailblazers. Now, the Clippers made a statement because they had some scrutiny, with Blake Griffin, and that he punched an assistant and was hurt throughout most of the year. But I think the Clippers made a statement. So you know what? But I think Portland's going to come back because they're led by Damian Lillard. He's had postseason experience before. He knows what it takes to elevate those guys and bring them and elevate their games. So I predicted Trailblazers in 7. That was my prediction for that series. And I honestly think that series is going to go 7 games. And I think Damian Lillard's going to step it up. Because, last night the Clippers were led by Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. Paul respectively had 28 points, followed by Griffin's 19. And could the Clippers make a run? Yeah. But, the Trailblazers, I think they're just as good as the Clippers. So that's a series that's 50-50 up in the air. And then you move on to the Thunder and Mavericks series. Now, this is a series that I think is going to end in 4, 5 games at best. If you're nice enough to give Dallas a win, But this series, when you saw in Game 1 on Saturday, the Mavericks just seemed helpless. They seemed helpless. They couldn't stop Durant and Westbrook, who had a combined 46 points. Durant had 20. Had a combined 46 points. Durant had 24, and Russell Westbrook had another double double, close to a triple double, I should say. But I don't see the Mavericks winning or coming back in this series. I think once Chandler Parsons was done for the year, as a Maverick fan or even as a basketball fan in general, NBA fan, you knew that this series was going to go nowhere and that the Mavs had no chance of just even making a deep run or even just getting past the first round of the playoffs without Chandler Parsons. Parsons is a playmaker, and him being out of that Maverick lineup doesn't do them any good. The only playmaker they pretty much have is Dirk, but Dirk's getting up in age. He can only do so much. So I see the Thunder sweeping the Mavericks in that series. Now we go on to the last and final Western Conference first round matchup between the Spurs and the Grizzlies. And the Spurs, they just dominated the Grizzlies. They were led by Kawhi Leonard, 20 points, who won the Defensive Player of the Year. And you know what? The Spurs, I'd say, are just as good as the Warriors. As some people may think that's crazy, but I think the Spurs are just as good as the Warriors because you know what? They have the big three in Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker. They have a phenomenal coach in Greg Popovich. And not to mention, they had the biggest free agent prize last summer in LaMarcus Aldridge, who had some postseason experience with Portland. But you know what? Now he has a chance to win a championship. And, with Memphis, without Marc Gasol, who's the heart and soul of that Memphis team, and there's just no way, absolutely no way, that I can see Memphis, making a run in this series or even putting San Antonio on its heels. There's no way. And not to mention, there's no Mike Conley Jr. Because when Gasol, just like how Parsons went down for the Mavericks, as soon as Gasol went down for the Grizzlies, they weren't making a run. There was absolutely no way that the Grizzlies were going to make a run in the playoffs. And that there was no way that they were going to get a 4 or a 5 or even a 6 seed, that is. They were fortunate enough to finish 7th, also fortunate enough that Houston stumbled in the playoffs and they limped their way in. Who else? Who are they going to rely on? That's another thing. With Gasol being out, who's a prominent defender and scorer in the paint, who are they going to rely on? Zach Randolph? He's up in age. He's slowly getting past his prime. Or an aging Vince Carter who's 39 or going to be 39 years old. You can't. If this was Vince Carter of 2000 or even Vince Carter of 2006, then they may have a chance. But you know what? This is 2016, and Vince Carter's another player that's way past his prime. And then I just don't see the Grizzlies doing it. I don't see the Grizzlies, being the Spurs or even making this a series. And also another thing, now we're going to move on to the East. Another thing that shocked me, other than the Pistons and the Cavaliers, Game 1, and the Pistons, putting the Cavs on the ropes, was the dominant performance of the Miami Heat over the Charlotte Hornets. Now, going into the series, I could see most people picking Miami. I could see most people saying Miami is the better team than Charlotte. The Heat have that experience. They've been to the finals before. They still have some players from their finals teams. I get it. But But you got to give Charlotte credit because they are a good defensive team led by Al Jefferson. And they play through the whistle, and they're like a blue collar team. With Kemba Walker, and you want to throw Jeremy Lin in there, we'll throw Jeremy Lin in there. But I did not see. I was completely flabbergasted to see the Heat dominate the Hornets as they did yesterday. Now, do I think Charlotte's going to come back and play better in Game 2? Absolutely. Because like I said, they're a blue-collar team. They work hard and they play through the whistle, and they're not to mention they're a good defensive team. But I think this is one series. I think this game was just one of those games where just Charlotte didn't have anything going. No momentum either way. And I think they're going to bounce back, and I think they can make this a series. I think they can make this a series. Now, I picked them to be an upset. I picked this to be an upset because they're the 6th seed and Miami's a 3 seed. But you know what? I think this is. Do I have full faith? No. Somewhat. I'm not. But see, the thing is, when it comes to sports, people can't jump the gun when it comes to game ones. Like they're so glued to game one that they forget, hey, the team that won game one, they have to win another 3 games. You know, and I'm not going to jump ship with the Hornets, so I think they could still pull it off. It's going to be a little harder because we saw what Miami's capable of doing. And then we move on to the Raptor-Pacers series. Now, I thought that the Raptors being the 2nd seed, now I know it's game 1, but you know what? The Raptors, we've seen in years past, they have a tendency of just losing the first game. You know what, and giving the other team momentum and that confidence of saying, hey, you know what, we can beat this team. Because it happened last year with the Wizards when they got swept, and it happened the year before with the Brooklyn Nets when they won Game 1, and eventually winning that series in Game 7 in Toronto. So they won 2 games in Toronto that year. Think about that. But it's only, like I said, it's only Game 1. Let's see how the Raptors do tonight in Game 2. If they fall behind 0-2 like last year, then you know what? They were the most underachieving franchise in the NBA. Bar none. And then we move on to the final series, which between the Atlanta Hawks and the Boston Celtics. You know, the Celtics, you know, they gave the Hawks a run for their money, though. It was a good game. It was a good back-and-forth game. Hawks made some plays down the stretch, you know, led by Jeff Teague and Kyle Korver and Al Horford. But I think this is going to be a 7-game series, and I think the Hawks are going to pull this out. This is not going to be a short series. Absolutely not. Besides, if you look at years past or history of the NBA playoffs, the 4 or 5 seeds usually go the longest. So, you know what? I think Boston's going to come back, even though Avery Bradley is hurt and has a calf injury and may miss the series. But I think Boston, you know, led by Isaiah Thomas, they'll be back in the series. But in the end, I think Atlanta's going to win in 7. And that concludes our first segment of The Rock is On.